Welcome back to the North Star Takes podcast. I'm Bailey Paulicki. He's Jacob Liberta. We're a Minnesota sports podcast. So if you're a Minnesota sports fan, hit that subscribe button on this channel. And if you're a Vikings fan, give this video a like because the Minnesota Vikings are now officially finished with their mandatory mini camp. And now they get a little 6-week break here before training camp starts in late July. And I'm sure that will be here before we even know it. So we're just going to get into some takeaways, some stuff we've seen, some stuff we saw, some stuff we heard. Just regarding minicamp, little notes and observations. Honestly, the Vikings are kind of a boring team right now. There's not a whole lot of drama going on. There's a couple position battles that we'll talk about, but you know they're not really battling it out yet in minicamp. It's more or less just installing the offense, kind of getting to know the team, and especially with the new coaching staff, just kind of everyone's kind of relearning everything. So let's get into some notes here, Liberta. Right off the bat, we got Jesse Davis starting as of right now, at least, he's the first team right guard. What do you make of that, considering they signed Chris Reed as well this offseason? They drafted Ed Ingram in the second round, and they still have Wyatt Davis, third round pick from last year in the mix as well. So what do you think of this, at least this initial development here on the offensive line?
I really don't like this. This scares me a lot because I feel really good about where our offensive line is projected to go, like in the future, like not necessarily in the present moment, but like hopefully by the end of this year and beyond, like it'll be pretty set for a while.
Yeah.
At least one would hope, especially if Bradbury comes into his own somehow this year. But yeah, I think if you look at it just on the surface, I'm not even really thinking about it too much. I think about the five offensive linemen we ended last year with, and then the five we look like we're trending towards this year. Again, there's a whole training camp to play out, and things could change at this position. So I take this with a grain of salt for now. But it's like we'll return four starters, so it'll be Darrisaw, O'Neal. Feel great about them on at the tackle position. Feel great about at least good enough, I should say, about Ezra Cleveland at left guard. Bradbury again,
Yep.
everybody knows about that. Shaky at center. But the right guard, we're going from Ole Udo to this Jesse Davis, who graded as one of the worst tackles in the NFL last year. He had a 52.5 PFF grade. Like, I'm not having that. So, like, we almost borderline are, like, getting worse if he's out there starting. So, I don't want to see that come week one. We play the Packers. I don't want that guy in the field. It better be Chris Reed, who graded more towards league average, or Ed Ingram, ideally, if he's the rookie second round pick, if he's ready to go
Yeah.
right away, I think that's a great sign. But yeah, I want to avoid Jesse Davis as much as possible. I get he's playing tackle last year, now it's guard, so it's a bit different, but like he's still great as one of the worst offensive linemen. So like this does concern me.
Yeah, I don't necessarily understand this. I know he's got the starting experience, like you mentioned. He's played, several positions with the Dolphins,
Mm-hmm.
but they brought in Chris Reed, who was a backup offensive lineman for the Colts, but he actually had to start a few games last season and graded out very well. I think he'd be a solid option at right guard, and I also think he'd be a solid option to compete with Garrett Bradbury for that starting center role. But as of right now, it seems like nobody's really competing with him for that spot either, and it's kind of his job. So, which I don't really understand, considering how rough he's been the last several years. Um, they didn't pick up his fifth-year option, so that kind of shows that they don't have a ton of confidence in him. And so I don't know. It's confusing right now. I'm sure there'll be more clarity as we head into training camp and stuff. But yeah, the Jesse Davis thing doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I agree with you. If it could somehow be Ed Ingram, Wyatt Davis is almost looking like a likely cut candidate at this point. I mean, you hear like Paul Allen talk about him. You hear people that are there at practice and stuff. I mean, he's not even getting a chance to rotate in there with the first team. So it's like, there must be nothing there in terms of promising talent or upside or anything that would make them consider starting Wyatt Davis. So I think it's getting pretty close to the point of being able to call him a bust. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if he gets cut out of training camp this year, just because they got Ed Ingram, they got Davis and Chris Reed as well. I mean, they got some really solid depth on the interior now. So it's going to be tough for Wyatt Davis to find a spot, I think, especially considering they're going to keep at least 3, if not 4 tackles. When you move Ole Udo back to tackle, and you have Blake Brandel, who was on the team last year, still as a depth piece too. So any other thoughts from you on the offensive line before we shift over to some wide receiver talk here?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I truthfully think it could come down to Jesse Davis and Wyatt Davis as far as who's getting cut, really. Because if you really stack it up, like you said, because you have our 2 tackles and Ezra Cleveland, let's start. Plus, like you mentioned, you have Ole Udo and Blake Brandel. You feel pretty set at the tackle position. And then you have one guard with Cleveland, like I mentioned, and then you have Bradbury, and then Chris Reed is the only other one with like center flexibility, like true center flexibility on this offensive
Yeah.
line. So you feel like he's a lock. So then you're already stacking it up 7, 8 linemen deep. So I feel like it could come down to both Davises here, really, just because if you don't feel like Jess Davis starts, I don't feel like I mean, I suppose he could be the backup. Then you cut Wyatt Davis, but it really depends. But I'm just kind of looking at it that way, where it's like you're battling for what 2 guard spots because then you figure Chris Reed can also be like a swing between
Yes.
just an interior offensive lineman backup if he doesn't start. So that could be something to watch too in training camp.
Yeah, Chris Reed could be like a Joe Berger type. If you need him to play a
Yeah,
couple games at center, he could. If you need him a couple games at guard, he could. So um,
exactly.
I think that'll be a nice piece to have for sure. But let's switch over to the wide
Mhm.
receivers here. KJ Osborne and Amir Smith-Marset basically didn't participate for the last couple of weeks here. It sounds like neither one of them have a serious injury, and they should be good to go by training camp. But still noteworthy, I guess, just because they haven't really gotten to run those live reps yet with the offense. Um, I saw BC Johnson was getting run as the wide receiver 3. He's kind of the forgotten guy in that wide receiver room after tearing his ACL last year. He was the wide receiver 3 the previous 2 seasons. And even, a couple of years ago when Thielen got hurt, he was the wide receiver 2 for a while. So he's got some good NFL experience. He's not a flashy player by any means. And then Jalen Naylor, the rookie, he's getting a chance. It sounds like, I was listening to Paul Allen the other day, and he basically said, he's hearing rumblings of Jalen Naylor's kind of got that rookie Stephon Diggs type vibe where he's just burning people in practice. Obviously, he's a speedster. That's why they drafted him. Keenan McCardell apparently stood on the table for him. That's kind of the way Kwesi made it sound. So what are your impressions on this wide receiver room here, Liberta?
Yeah, this is fascinating. These guys getting opportunities, like you said, BC coming off the torn ACL, getting a chance again to have some significant run with the first team, and then Jalen Naylor, our 6th-round pick that the coaching staff felt pretty good about taking. And it's going to be. I mean, the wide receiver. I feel like every year for us, especially, is always a battle at the end of the roster, at the end of the depth chart there, where there's always a good handful of guys competing for like 1 or 2 spots, something like that. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
figure it out or really think about it, I guess you have Jefferson, Thielen, obvious locks. I'd say Osborne and Smith-Marset are both locks as well, and in my
Yep.
opinion. I mean, ISM maybe less so, but I still think he's safe just because I feel like he brings a skill set that isn't necessarily easy to find. So if you feel like those 4 guys are already locks, how many receivers are you going to keep on the team? Like, is it going to be
Yep.
5, maybe 6? And so then it's like, well, who's that 5th guy? I mean, Jalen Naylor, it feels like you almost feel like he wouldn't get cut just because if the coaching staff likes him a lot and he's looking good here, even in minicamp right away, like it's probably trending in the right direction towards making the team. So it just depends, matter of preference, if you want to keep 6 receivers on the roster or not. I mean, there's still other guys floating out there. Like, for instance, I think Dan Chisena is still on the team, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
special teams ace, and he's
Yep.
classified as a wide receiver. So it's like, I don't know. I think that's going to be another one that I think fans, it'll be nice and juicy to watch unfold.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I saw our guy Chad Beebe signed with the Texans on a 1-year deal. So it's kind of nice that we're in a different spot now where you don't have to think of like Chad Beebe being your wide receiver 3 anymore. There's probably really an outside shot Dan Chisena makes the team unless they keep 7 receivers again. Because I think the 6 are pretty well set. You're going to have Jefferson and Thielen, Osborne and Smith-Marset. BC Johnson, I think, will make the team, and Jalen Naylor, I think, will make the team as well. Like, I feel like there's definitely going to be some competition. Don't get me wrong, because they still have guys like Blake Prohl and guys that were intriguing last year that might have gotten hurt. But I think it's pretty well set. Like unless something really surprising happens here, I mean, I'm pretty excited for this wide receiver room because both Smith-Marset and Naylor are speedy guys. Um, you know, ISM could really be a trick type player. I know the McVay style offense that O'Connell's probably going to run uses a lot of motion. I could see them, motioning Amir Smith-Marset quite a bit. Um, I'm also excited to see that with both Thielen and Jefferson, maybe even KJ Osborne as well. It's just going to be an interesting wrinkle that this team hasn't really run before in the past. So, yeah, super exciting wide receiver room, and it's nice to have some solid depth there. I know you and I were kind of clamoring for maybe we should pick another stud wide receiver in this year's draft, and they had the opportunity to a couple different times, but it's just the way it is, I guess. They have faith in the top end of their talents, which is Thielen and Jefferson. I think you and I are a little skeptical about Thielen being able to stay healthy, but the depth outside of those two as well is pretty solid. But can any of those guys really step up and be a wide receiver 2 for a long stretch of time if Jefferson or Thielen goes down? I guess that's the question that remains to be answered.
Yeah, for sure. And only time will tell if it was the right call, passing on a receiver there at 12 when we could have taken a guy like Jameson Williams, who the Lions ended up taking in our spot when they traded up with us. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that could be that could be a turning point in this team's history, quite frankly, given the
Yeah.
game-breaking ability that Jameson Williams appears to have. And if he just has a good career with the Lions, it's going to look really bad for us because then we could have went 3 deep and felt really good about our offense. But then again, he could just as well bust and turn into almost nothing, and then just rotten out in Detroit. So then we made the right call. I don't know, but I think I'm pretty confident in O'Connell's ability to get the most out of guys, though, especially offensively, just because of the way he
Yeah.
really approaches being a coach and being a mentor, really, and being with the guys. I guess I think, and then basically being hopefully a master schemer, I guess you'd call him. So hopefully we don't necessarily need the high end talent at this position, like going 3 deep, I guess. But it makes it easier that way. But then you'd also think that's kind of where you really make up ground on your roster is like, what is your coach good at? And clearly
Yeah.
with O'Connell, it's going to be offense. And it's like, well, then you should be able to get away with like lesser talent and him just being able to put guys in good spots. Then you can maybe load other areas where it's more of a weakness point for him as far as being a coach.
Yeah, and we're not going to touch on him too much, but Irv Smith you can factor into this equation as well. I mean, I think
True.
he'll basically be another wide receiver out there on the field, and it sounds like he's basically back to full health. He was participating fully in these mini camps and OTAs, so that's obviously encouraging. Hopefully, that he can finally have that breakout season we've kind of been waiting for from him.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that's another interesting wrinkle too, because even if Thielen goes down for 5 or 6 weeks again, or if Jefferson has to miss a few games, you can still work things around between Dalvin Cook, Irv Smith, Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne. I mean, you got weapons, so I'm sure O'Connell's going to have some creativity, definitely more than the Zimmer Kubiak experiment with offense. So, any other final thoughts from you before we wrap up here on this Vikings minicamp observations?
Yeah, I think like you said at the top, it's been pretty quiet, which I think is a good thing. I think it means there's no problems, no really uncertainty, I guess, in the locker room. I think
Hmm.
everybody feels good about where we're at and going into the summer here when we'll get back together at the end of July for training camp and ramping up to the 2022 season.
Yeah, it's crazy. Last year, you had the Daniil Hunter contract negotiations that were kind of a
Yeah.
distraction. You had Mike Zimmer being on the hot seat. Then you had all the COVID controversy of who was vaxxed, who wasn't vaxxed. And it just feels like this year is going to be kind of a completely different vibe, a complete 180. And I think that's what this team needs. And we talked about it before in a previous video, but they're out doing stuff together as a team, just kind of enjoying each other's company, which I think is big too. So I'm glad that there's better vibes around the team. And, hopefully that makes a difference as well in terms of performance this year. So that will do it for this edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Like I mentioned earlier, please click the like button on this video and hit the subscribe button on this channel and help spread the word about our show to other sports fans, especially Minnesota sports fans. Feel free to give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram and let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. What other things stuck out to you during Vikings minicamp? And are there any other storylines you're looking forward to as training camp approaches here within the next month and a half? So until next time, thanks for watching.